Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today I will be breaking down what happened in week 25 of the 2020 season of the Overwatch League. Let's quickly throw up my picks spreadsheet so you can take a look at it real quick. 10-4 on the week, 1-1 on my big pick games. You might notice some numbers that maybe don't add up or line up based on what I had on my spreadsheet last week. I missed a couple games here and there. I went back and I counted up all of the matches, found some numbers were a little wrong, so I've updated it a little bit. Gave me one additional big pick game win and 2 additional overall wins, so it helped me a little bit, which I was not expecting. But that's my spreadsheet real quick. As with last week, I'm not going to talk about every game in depth. I'm going to run through a lot of them really quickly, and I will break down the ones that I felt were the most important. So on Friday, 2 pretty one-sided matches. Atlanta Reign, 3-1 win over the Boston Uprising. Of note, though, the Boston Uprising are the first team to lose to the Atlanta Reign when they win a map. So the Reign, their first win of the season, that was not a 3-0. 3-1 win for them. Shock beat the Mayhem 3-1 as well. That was my big pick on Friday. I had a feeling it would be a pretty one-sided series. It ended up being a one-sided series, but we did get to see Tayo's debut, which was pretty good. I actually was a big fan of Tayo this weekend. I thought he played very well, both against the Mayhem and the Titans, though he didn't play the whole series against the Titans, which I thought he would. But they put Super in on Genji again later on. Moving on to Saturday, we're going to skip over the Dynasty Hunters game for now. Shanghai Dragons, 3-2 win over the Spitfire. Very good series from the Spitfire, almost a reverse sweep. It was interesting to see the Spitfire run the Chengdu comp, the Wrecking Ball Zarya with Genji, Ashe, and Mercy Zen. It worked very well for the Spitfire. They actually found a lot of success, but ultimately the Dragons were able to find the win. NYXL Guangzhou Charge match we'll get to in a second. Shock beat the Titans, first game in NA on Saturday, 3-0. Fastest match in Overwatch League history. Not a lot to really learn from that one. Super played Genji again, and it was a super one-sided affair. Not really a whole lot to take away from that one. Like I said, fastest match in Overwatch League history. Only learned so much from that. The Mayhem with a win over the Justice. Pretty good win for the Mayhem. I believe it was a 3-0, may have been a 3-1. It was a pretty dominant win for the Mayhem. Not the best win they've had, but still pretty good. The Dallas Fuel beat the Boston Uprising. Not really a surprise there. Fuel on the rise, actually having a very good go so far in July and in the Countdown Cup qualifiers. So good win for them against the Uprising. Good to see them continuing to win. Moving on to Sunday, Chengdu Hunters Spark game. We will skip over that for now. I keep forgetting the ones I'm skipping over for a little bit. Shanghai Dragons with a 3-0 win over the Seoul Dynasty. Dominant victory for them. Seoul Dynasty struggling a lot this weekend, but we'll talk about that a little more later. Not a great showing from Dynasty against the Dragons there. The Paris Eternal beat the LA Gladiators 3-0. It was a pretty close series on at least Eichenwald. The other maps, not so much. The Eternal keeping the pace to take the #1 overall spot in the Countdown Cup, but we'll see what happens. The Fusion beat the Defiant. Oh my, oh my, what a one-sided series this one was. Carpe had a great game. One of his best yet this season. I'm going to throw up a tweet here that you can see, just so you get an idea of how one-sided this series truly was. This, of course, is our good friend, Backpack Matt Marcel of the Overwatch League. Carpe, 37-5. On the series. Incredible performance from him. Second fewest deaths on his team, behind only Fury, who didn't play the whole series. He only played 1 map, and Carpe played all 3 and had 5 deaths. So really dominant performance there from the Fusion, and a really good performance from Carpe specifically. So those are all the games that I just wanted to kind of run over real quick. Let's talk about the games I want to talk about specifically. We're going to start with the Chengdu Hunters against the Seoul Dynasty, the game that you are seeing on your screens now, the gameplay you are seeing now. This game was somewhat surprising in the moment when it happened. I didn't think that the Chengdu Hunters would win, though I suppose it wasn't the most out there thing that's happened. The Chengdu Hunters have looked good. They beat New York last week. I didn't expect it to be much of a thing that happened again, however, but Chengdu came out and they looked very, very, very good, pulling off the win over the Seoul Dynasty. It was a back and forth series that ended with Chengdu getting their first win ever on Busan after having never won it this season. So really good win from the Chengdu Hunters. But this match kind of solidified the composition that we saw dominate, especially Asia. It was played a bit in North America as well, but especially in Asia, we saw the Chengdu comp, as I mentioned before, where you had the Wrecking Ball Zarya tank line with Ashe Genji as your DPS and Mercy Zenyatta as your supports. So Chengdu was the team that ran it first. They ran it last week against New York. They found a lot of success against New York, obviously, with the reverse sweep win. And we saw a number of teams adopt that composition this weekend as well. Most notably, London Spitfire, New York Excelsior. They were the two teams who kind of found the most success other than Chengdu. Though London wasn't able to win, they were able to take 2 maps off the London Spitfire, or off the Shanghai Dragons, 1 map off of the main 6 roster they have that have barely lost any maps. They've now lost 2. 1 to the Seoul Dynasty and now 1 to the London Spitfire. So this is a really, really, really interesting thing to look at, this Chengdu comp. And we're going to probably talk about it a lot more on Friday when I do my picks and predictions video. Because this composition was good now because there was no hero pools, right? No Orisa, no Ana, no Mei, no Widowmaker. I don't think Mei or Widowmaker really impact it as much, though obviously Mei is very good against Wrecking Ball. It's slowing him down and keeping him from being able to do a lot. I think that Orisa coming back is going to probably mean this composition will likely die, and we likely won't see much more of this Chengdu comp going forward, but it's always possible. Chengdu themselves will probably keep running it and finding some success with it, but Chengdu have looked really good. They 3-0 in the Countdown Cup qualifiers. They have finished their regular season, so they are no longer playing matches outside of the Countdown Cup and the playoffs. They finished with a 7-14 record, -14 differential. Not incredible, but certainly better than where I think many people expect them to be after the past couple of weeks where they looked pretty weak. It was a good result from them getting the wins over, of course, New York, and then also against Seoul and Hangzhou. Seoul against Hangzhou, I'll just transition to this one. Super one-sided series for the Hunters. 3-0 win for them. They'd never beaten the Hangzhou Spark before. There was a team that had always beaten Chengdu with the Hangzhou Spark, but Chengdu manages to get the win this time around in dominant fashion. Once again, running this Chengdu comp. Obviously, it's their composition, so any comp they run is a Chengdu comp. But this one in particular, with the Wrecking Ball Zarya, it worked very well against the Spark. The Spark did not do a lot well against this composition. They especially didn't look very comfortable running the Wrecking Ball themselves. They tried it, but really they were running the Winston for the most part. The Spark have found their most success this season when they are running Ryan Zarya, to be completely honest with you. Gushue is a great Winston player. They didn't look all that great. IDK had a tweet about how he was kind of struggling with some mental health things and had kind of lost, I guess, a bit of a drive for the game. So he wasn't playing, and it was Mika instead. And I think that obviously something notable to talk about, but the Hunters, really, really, really good performances this weekend. 3-0, possibly going into the Countdown Cup as the +1 seed. Depending on what happens with Shanghai, they're the only other team who can compete with them. Shanghai currently 2-0. They are sitting at 2-0 +4 right now. So very, very, very likely that they do surpass the Chengdu Hunters. At worst, they would tie with them, I would think. They play New York next week, so definitely a losable series for Shanghai. But you'd expect Shanghai to win that series and pass the Chengdu Hunters in the standings. But the #2 seed has won both tournaments in Asia, so being #1 seed doesn't guarantee you anything. That's it for the Chengdu matches. Let's move on to the NYXL Guangzhou Charge match, because this one was very, very, very interesting. Now, normally, I avoid talking about 3-0 matches because usually you don't learn a lot from a 3-0 match. However, the NYXL 3-0 win over the Guangzhou Charge was notable because I, and many others, did not expect that the NYXL would win this series. I thought Guangzhou had this one pretty much in the bag. Guangzhou looked very good last week. They looked good in the Summer Showdown. New York struggled last week against Chengdu, though now we know that Chengdu, of course, a better team than we had originally thought. But in addition, they didn't look very good in the Summer Showdown. They lost to Guangzhou last time they played them. Guangzhou 3-0'd them last time they played them. So it seemed pretty logical to think that New York would win the series. New York looked very good. They looked very comfortable running this Chengdu composition. Haksal was able to play very well in the Genji. Nene was able to play the Ashe, and that's where Nene shines. Haksal shines on the Genji. Jonak was able to play Zenyatta, one of his best heroes. Anima was able to play Mercy, one of his best heroes. Mono and the Wrecking Ball was kind of the big surprise factor where we didn't really know how good he would be on it, but he looked very good on it. But the biggest thing for me was Bianca on the Zarya. Yes, you heard me correctly. Bianca finally got his chance to play in the Overwatch League for this NYXL team. And dare I say, he looked incredible. And yes, it was one game. I don't want to sit here and say that this one win is proof that Bianca should be playing for this team forever and for the future, and that he should always play over Hoppa. It was one game where the Guangzhou Charge didn't look very comfortable in the meta running this composition, and New York did. And it was a meta where New York had arguably 5 players on their best heroes, with Nene, Haksal, though I think you would say Nene's best hero is Widow, but his Ashe is also very good. But at least 4 players on the best heroes with Haksal, Bianca, Jonak, and Animo. So this is a composition that worked very well for New York. I think that what we saw is something we already kind of all knew. New York looks the best when they run the lineup of Haksal and Nene. I think Haksal and Nene is New York's best DPS duo. I think when the two of them play together, it looks the best. They've run a lot of SBB Nene. I'm not a huge fan of SBB Nene. I don't think it works the way they want it to. I thought that the Genji Tracer that they did run with Haksal and Nene looked very good. I think there's certainly places where you do want to have SBB, but I think for the most part, Haksal and Nene is the two that you need to be running. I also really want to see Bianca continue to play. One of my biggest problems that I've had this season with Hoppa is Hoppa didn't support his team very well. His peeling wasn't great. His support for Mono wasn't very great, and it kind of shown in a lot of their matches. There were numerous times throughout this series where I noticed Bianca making huge plays that probably went unnoticed in ways they shouldn't have. Huge bubbles to save teammates. There was a time on Lijiang Gardens where Wolf and Achilleos were like, oh, this is a fight that's pretty much impossible for New York to win. They don't have the ultimates. They're going in a disadvantage. Their composition comes in a disadvantage here. Happy comes in, throws a pulse bomb on Jonak, and you think, well, it's over. And he survived because he was bubbled by Bianca. And Bianca obviously helped him. And there were times where Bianca had perfectly timed bubbles on Anima Resurrects, and he bubbled Mono when Mono needed it, and he bubbled Haksal when Haksal needed it. And it makes me wonder why we haven't seen Bianca before this point. And I'm sure there's reasons why. I'm sure that there are things that go into the decision for this team that you look and you say, well, there's reasons why Hoppa was playing, I'm sure. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Hoppa was, that this team is now all of a sudden a championship team because they benched Hoppa for Bianca, who we've seen play one match. I do want to see more Bianca going forward. I think New York's best bet going forward is playing more Bianca. I think that's what they have. I mean, it looked to me like this was the best New York we've seen in a very long time. So I would like to see more Bianca in the future. Hotba did tweet something out about how Bianca was the best Zarya in the league. So it makes you wonder if, they're running Diva or Sigma. Will Bianca still play? I think Hoppa has a pretty good Sigma. I think it's his best hero. and I think that the team looks the best in that situation, but I'd still like to see Bianca play it just to see kind of how the play style difference between Bianca and Hotpa changes the dynamics of this team. I would love to see Bianca continue to play because I thought this team looked really good with him in the lineup. So that's it for that match. I could talk about New York all day, so let's move on to one of the biggest surprises of the weekend, the Philadelphia Fusion with a reverse sweep victory over the LA Gladiators, an incredibly close series. The Fusion tried to run a unique kind of Chengdu-esque comp. It wasn't exactly a Chengdu comp. It didn't really work. And they switched to plan B, which was put in Funny Astro and Fury, and hope and pray that they could win without having practiced the composition, and they did. It was a very impressive series of events. The final on Lijiang Tower on Control Center, Carpe had an incredible flank that really helped solidify this win for the Fusion. It was a really, really, really good match in the Fusion. One of the best matches they've had. Reverse sweeps are hard. Reverse sweeps take a lot of strength. Reverse sweeps also show a lot about a team, how they react kind of in the mental game. You go down 2-0, you bring in players who haven't practiced, and you just kind of hope that you win. And the Fusion were able to pull it off, and they walked away with the win. Gladiators looked very good as well. I don't want to take away from the Gladiators. They struggled against Paris the following day on Sunday, but against the Fusion, the Gladiators looked very good. Mirror on the Zarya really excelled in a way that I felt showed that they have a lot of potential going forward, and they have things that they can do to make themselves the best team possible. I actually gained a lot of faith in the Gladiators after this weekend. Yes, they had the bad loss to Paris. There were some bright spots there that I think really showcased that the Gladiators do have moments, and they have the ability to have good performances and put up good performances. We're just not seeing them in the best light all the time. So, interesting series. Fusion, though, pull out the win in a way that really, really highlights how good they are and just how strong they are as a team. Big, big win for the Fusion, helping them stay near the top of the leaderboards in North America. The final match of the week was the Washington Justice against the Houston Outlaws. Last one I want to highlight because the Washington Justice 3-1 victory over the Houston Outlaws. This is a surprise to me. I thought the Justice played very well. I thought Arc and Aim God played very well. And I thought that there was some good play from Janu, especially. Stitch I thought played very well. Tuba played very well. Roar had some up and down moments, but by the end of the series especially looked very good. And even against the Mayhem, I thought that there were some good performances coming out from Aim God and Tuba and Janu. And I wanted to talk about this match mainly because I want to talk about the Justice. The Outlaws had disappointed this week. Obviously, they've disappointed so far in the Countdown Cup. As good as we thought they might have been, they have shown that they aren't that good. Hydration's Ball and Winston and Reinhardt just are not that good. His Orisa really is the place where he excels. But this weekend, watching the Justice, I kind of came to the realization that the Justice really aren't that far off from being a competitive team. They need more players. They can't be keeping this 6-player roster and expect to find a ton of success in the future. I don't think they need to necessarily get rid of a bunch of their players. I think you need an obvious upgrade at main tank. You need another player who's just better than Roar. Mag is the obvious one that comes to mind playing in Contenders. He'd be a really good pickup for this Justice team if they could manage to grab him. But I don't think, Janu is great. You don't need another flex tank. Janu is everything you need. I think Aim God has actually been very good this season. I think it's actually, you're going to struggle to find a flex support who is a lot better than Aim God. I actually think Aim God has been a very good player for them this season. I think you could go for an upgrade at main support. I don't think it's the most necessary thing. I think Arc has still had some pretty good performances this season, but I think you can definitely find better players and Contenders. On the DPS side of things, you need to bolster your DPS. Stitch and Tuba, if they can play the heroes that they're the best at, they have good performances, but they have holes. Stitch is a very Sabiobi type of player in terms of his hero pool. He's a hit scam player by trade, but you're not really going to trust him that much on your Widowmakers and your Ashes. He excels more when he can play the McCree or the Sombra or the Tracer. You need another flex, or someone who can play the Widowmaker, the Ashe at a high level to really boost this roster up a lot, bring a lot to this team. You can also add another flex DPS player. I think Tuba's actually been pretty good. His hero pool has been especially highlighted recently. I don't think he's been a problem. You certainly can add another one, and I wouldn't complain about it. But I don't think you need to nuke this roster. I think you just have to bolster it. Definitely main tank is the spot where I would say you have to improve. And I think getting another main support would help. And bolstering your DPS lineup, adding another hit scan DPS especially, is really what this Justice team, I think, needs to do to find some success in the future. But overall, I think this is a very good performance from the Justice, a good win for them, and proof that they are not that far away from being able to be a true competitive team this year. Probably not, but next year, there's a real chance that they can bring in some really good free agent players, that they can really start to excel as a team in the future, and potentially even be contenders, which people thought they might be this season. Things didn't go their way. But I think this Justice team really is a couple moves away from being a really legitimate team, especially in a conference and a division where I think there's actually a lot of holes and it's somewhat wide open. Mayhem are good, Fusion are good, Reign are shaky, Houston is shaky. If the Justice can kind of bolster their roster a bit, they can compete with the Mayhem, they can compete with the Fusion, and potentially be a competitive team, especially going into 2021. But that is all I have for you today. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing for more content like this in the future. Let me know down below your thoughts on the matches from this weekend or anything that I talked about specifically today. But with that, I am going to get out of here. Thank you once again. Hope you're all staying safe and healthy, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.